Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight. My name is Jackie Snyder. I am usually the host of these speaker sessions. And tonight we have Alexandria Pearson with us. She is actually a Gov State alumni, which is wonderful. And she is currently a special education teacher. So she'll be talking to us tonight about accommodations and needs of exceptional learners. So this is definitely a great topic to talk about because you will be, working with different students. And I know a lot of you will be getting that special education approval. So this will just kind of go off of that. So I'd like to introduce all of you to Alexandria.
All right. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everybody. As Jacquelyn said earlier, I graduated from Governor State in 2020, COVID years, right? So I'm going to go through a Google slideshow presentation that gives you information about special education, what I see every day, the needs of our students, and a lot of different accommodations and the difference between accommodations and modifications, okay? At the end of the session, I will have a Padlet that I will share with everyone so that you all can use the link to drop questions or just feedback that you have for me. And then that will be the conclusion of my presentation, really, okay? So if you have questions while I'm going through the slides, I have no problem with clarifying things, or just save it for the end because we're gonna have time at the end as well, okay? So Jackie, do I have screen sharing privileges?
Yes, you should.
Okay, let's see. I haven't done a class on Zoom since COVID, so let's see.
Yes, I totally understand that.
Does okay. Um, Hold on, it's giving me an error
No
message.
worries. And everyone, while Alexandria is presenting, if you have questions like throughout the presentation, go ahead, put your questions in the chat box. We'll make sure that um, she goes over them. So go ahead. If you are not asking a question, please make sure you stay on mute just because of the background noise kind of interrupts. So, but yeah, should be good. Thank you. How you doing, Alexandria? You having trouble still?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
It's telling me something about granting access, which I
Okay. I'll just I'm going to make you co-host. I don't want to make you the host because then you have to bring
yeah,
people in.
that's fine.
So I just made you co-host, so that should help.
Oh, folders access? No. Right? No. Okay, I wasn't expecting. Okay, maybe camera. Oh, where's Zoom? Screen recording. Oh goodness. Okay. No.
So at the bottom, do you see the share screen?
Yes, I
Click.
do.
Okay.
It's not my Zoom, it's my actual computer that won't let me.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So maybe it keeps telling me. Oh, okay. I see now. I apologize. I was expecting it. Like I said, I haven't used
Wash your hands and mouth.
No worries.
okay. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, I got it. Let's do this. Okay.
Perfect.
Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
Is it working? Okay.
Yes.
I can't see it yet, so give me one.
Oh, okay. It says it's loading.
So,
There we go.
here we go. All right. So a little bit about me. I know you all are in early elementary. Is that correct? So I'm a mom of 4. These are my babies. I love dogs and animals. I'm very family oriented. Just an all around family girl. Okay. So I have a lot of just experience with younger populations, even though I teach high school. So I raise my babies. I'm very experienced with the younger population as well, okay? My next slide. Let's go. All right, so I graduated from Southern Illinois University. Go back. Come on, Google Slides. Don't do it to me now. Did it? Is it showing back on yours? No?
As history of special education.
Yeah, I see that too. I'm trying to go back. And it's not letting me. Okay, no, that's not right. Here we go. Google Slides. Man, goodness. All right. So my professional background is I graduated from Southern Illinois University in 2011. I had my bachelor's in speech communications and a minor in history. And then I graduated from Governor State with a degree in multi-categorical special education in 2020. I was working at a law firm as soon as I graduated from college. And then I decided to go back to school. I was an administrative assistant for a short period of time. And then I became a permanent sub. And when I was a permanent sub, I realized the high demand and need for teachers in our area, especially in the urban areas. And that kind of motivated me to go back to school to get my master's. So I graduated in 2020 during COVID. I first started working at Mansueto High School. That is a school that's located on the southwest side of the city. A high Latino and Latina population. And so originally we started on Zoom, of course, doing our academic school year during COVID, which was very tough. So I learned a lot of strategies to teach students digitally and through Google Classroom, which became very helpful for when we went back into the classroom. I stayed at Mansueto for an extra year and a half, and then I transferred to Carver Military Academy, which is where I work now. So Carver Military Academy, if you all don't know, is on the south side of the city, right near Augill Gardens, okay? Let's see. So I'm gonna give you just a basic history of special education and what that looks like. So okay, there we go. I guess I just have to slide it down. No, why is it doing this? Oh my goodness. My slideshow is not working with me today. Okay, got that. All right. All right, so my philosophy of teaching, you all can read that for this by yourself. I'm just gonna hit on a few topics. I believe that students all have learning differences. I don't believe that there is like an idea of having a normal style of learning. I think that we all have different ways that fit our needs best. And I try to implement that in my classroom. I work in general education classrooms as well as special education classrooms. And I've seen that students that aren't even on my like caseload or that are considered special education can use the techniques that we implement with our diverse learners each day. I think that students all should have the opportunity to have a healthy classroom environment. I'm very socio-emotional invested with students as well. I think that if you provide a warm, loving, and caring environment for your students and that they feel like you care about them, you can teach them a lot better. So I'm not very like super strict, I would say. But I provide an environment that's warm and loving and caring for my students, especially my students in the urban environments that have seen like a lot of things. I think that helps facilitate a lot of learning. So you could just glance through that to see my own personal philosophies. I also think that educators such as yourself should always remain knowledgeable and to always focus on learning new evidence-based practices that you can implement in the classroom. So as a teacher, we think that, okay, we got it, right? We learned this already, or I got my degree, but I think that learning never stops. So you always want to try to become better at what you're doing so that your students can become successful as well from your own attainment of knowledge, okay? So let's go over some of, is it gonna go? Some of the background of special education and what it means today. All right, so the history. So the history of special education, it began in 1975. Prior to 1975, there was not a like federal mandate that educational agencies had to like provide special accommodations or modifications or even special teaching for students that were considered diverse learners. So the act was created by Congress, which eventually became IDEA. They changed the name in 1990. So the Education of All Handicapped People became Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it was basically to make sure that all local state educational agencies provided free and appropriate public education to eligible children, right? And those services under IDEA are provided from students from age 3 to 21. So with early childhood, there are a lot of pre-intervention programs that try to catch students before they become kindergartners, such as like Easter seals that go and assess students that are under 3. And those provisions were found in IDEA Part C. And the idea was to catch students before they entered like pre-K and kindergarten so that they could provide students with interventions before they got like, I guess, worse. Because the belief is that the younger the student is, the better able you are to create those neural connections for students or children within their brains. And so a lot of the early intervention is done before the age of 3, but IDEA supports students, the Education Act supports students 3 to the age of 21. So even in high school, like students that are 18 and are considered like normal, if they are recommended to stay in school for extended learning, they have the eligibility to stay until they're 21, okay? So that's just fun fact. All right, so what does IDEA do? So it just ensures that students receive a free and appropriate public education. that all students under IDEA receive an IEP plan. An IEP plan is an individualized education plan, and that is a plan created for each student that has been recommended and has been deemed eligible to receive services to create a plan of their learning. So it's all individualized. Each student is assessed mostly by a psychologist, okay? And when they go through the process of being assessed, they take different tests. They can do observations. You get a lot of parent involvement. And the evaluators come together with the IEP team, and they collaborate to see what would be the best implemented plan for that child, okay? So once the IEP has been created and the student has been evaluated, the IEP is used also to track progress of the child. So they have like benchmarks and goals that need to be met each academic school year to assess if that child is keeping up with the plan, as well as the goals that were implemented for the child yearly. And that is done yearly, and every 3 years they get a reassessment, okay? So, okay. What happened to the next one? Okay, so another big part of IDEA is that they recommend parent participation, which is a big deal because you always want to make sure that parents are involved in their children's learning, obviously. And parents are the deciders of like final decisions with the IEP plan. So it's not just based on like what the psychologists think or what the teachers think. The parents have to be included in the planning of the IEP plan, as well as signing off on like all the final decisions for that plan. Okay, and it's also important to encourage parent involvement because of those of you that are parents, you just want to be involved in your child's learning process, right? You don't want to just leave that to the school. Another thing IDEA supports is students in the least restrictive environment. So that just mandates that any student with a learning difference be put in a suitable learning environment. And that could be different for each student. So there's the general education classroom, which is where everybody goes, right? And then there's mostly co-taught classrooms, which is next. And the co-taught classrooms allow general education teachers and special education teachers collaborations that they work together for the students in the classroom and the students in that classroom that are diverse learners. So students that come in the co-taught classroom get extra services from the learning specialists, okay? So here is a pyramid that I found that's really helpful because it gives you the idea of what's considered least restrictive and what's not. So as I talked about the general education classroom with modifications, that's the co-taught environment. Sometimes you have push-in and pull-out services. Push-in services are when a learning specialist comes in and does like small groups with the kids, or one-on-one time with the student to implement those things we talked about in the IEP plan. Pull-out services are when teachers come in and they take students out of the classroom for assistant learning. So that could be like extra tutor minutes, extra one-on-one time that's focused with just the student or a small group, or just different services different benchmarks that need to be made to implement the IEP in the classroom. All right, and then sometimes students are sent to non-public schools. That's mostly for students that go to like deaf and blind schools, where they specifically teach students that are deaf, blind, or deaf and blind. And then we have a homeschool environment, which is considered the most restrictive, and then the residential facility. So that's for facilities that work with students with like intellectual impairment. They're really like low functioning students. So that's students that need a lot of support. Okay, and they won't fit into the general education classroom or population. All right. So safeguards that IDEA creates are like protections that students and parents have that local education agencies cannot cross, and they have specific rights that allow that parents have access to all documentation that is given to the students from the psychologist or from the school, and that they have a part in creating a transitional plan for their child. And in early childhood, you don't have to worry about this, but in high school, when students become of age, they have a part of their IEP that gets created that's called a transitional plan. And that's just to help them transition into adulthood and learn independent life skills. Okay. And also another procedural safeguard that IDEA allows is that it allows parents and students to challenge the placement of their child. So if a child is put in like a restrictive environment that the parent doesn't approve of, then they have the ability to go through legal proceedings, through educational agencies, and eventually, sometimes they've even been seen in like federal court. Okay, so parents have rights. All right, so now I'm going to talk about what are those categories of IDEA that it covers, because IDEA only has 13 eligible categories that allow students to be considered eligible for special education. So those categories are specific learning disability that includes dyslexia, dyscalculia, and written expression disorder. So dyslexia is when students have problems decoding written words. Dyscalculia is how they view math. They have difficulties like with adding, subtracting, multiplication. You'll see students that have intellectual impairment. To be considered intellectually impaired, you have to have an IQ level that's under and below 70. Another intellectual impairment is considered students that have Down syndrome. Okay. A lot of times in my field, we see a lot of students that have, they're considered OHIs and they're considered other health impairments. And that is where ADHD falls and ADD falls, because they're not considered specific learning disabilities, because you cannot pinpoint what ADHD and learning, just because you have ADHD doesn't mean you have learning differences, basically. All right, the next one is visual impairment. So obviously people that are blind, hearing impairment, deafness, and hearing and visual impairment, which is blind and deaf. Another big one we see at my level in high school is emotional disturbance. So that's students that have mental disorders or children that have a tough time with emotional regulation, that have survived like traumatic experiences, and they're not coping well in school. Those are also students that have pretty intense anxiety disorders. The next category is traumatic brain injury. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Speech and language impairment, that's severe stuttering, mispronunciation of words. Orthopedic impairment, so that includes conditions that students don't have fully functional use of their bodies. They can be in wheelchairs. They may have to walk with like canes or something. So just any type of impairment that makes it difficult for them to be mobile. Cerebral palsy is a big one that I see, as well as students that have.
So I just saw it just came to my.
Multiple disabilities is just a mix of more than one of the disabilities that's been named. So that could be different things. So they just call it MD. A developmental delay, which is a big one in early childhood that teachers see a lot. when children are not developing at the rate of their peers, and of course, autism. All right, so here's a quick guide to what the process is for referrals. So if a parent or a teacher requests that their student be assessed, the school has to assess that student no later than the 15th school day after they receive the written parental request. So there's timelines that have to be considered to get your child assessed, right? And then a notice goes out. The notice gives the safeguards and the overview of special education. And then no later than the 45th day following the date of when the district receives the written parental consent, they do a full evaluation. Now that evaluation is not done by special education teachers, it's done by the psychologist that is at the school, or it could be like a speech language pathologist or occupational therapist. It just depends on what they're assessing. All right, and then within 30 calendar days of that assessment, they have to write a report to determine eligibility. Based on any of those 13 categories, that will give a student eligibility under IDEA to receive services. After eligibility is determined, an IEP is created, notice is sent to the parents and usually the student, and then that IEP is in place for the year, and teachers, general education teachers and special education teachers have to follow that IEP plan, okay? So, all right. So a big thing in special education that we learned is that early detection is so important. So as you all are early childhood teachers in the making, right? It's important to know what certain signs are that you notice with young children so that those interventions can be provided, because research has shown that the best way to offer interventions is before the age of 3. Okay, so if you're working with like infants, like at daycare and stuff, and you notice stuff, there are organizations that will come out and assess the child. Like I mentioned, Easter Seals, and they'll do an assessment to see if the child has like developmental delay, if autism is detected a lot of the times, or intellectual disability. The faster students receive services or interventions, it's not just a miracle, obviously, if they have like a severe impairment, but it's been shown that the brain is it's called brain plasticity, and that the brain is more moldable when children are still growing. So it's best to find before the age of 3, but of course, between 3 and 5 is a very critical age as well, because that allows children to create new neural connections for framework and planning. Okay. Now I want to just talk about the high incidence. A lot of times we see these same disabilities a lot. So these are the ones that teachers are usually looking for, but like I said, there's 13 categories that can be considered under IDEA. So we have specific learning disability, other health impairment, ADHD and ADD, autism spectrum disorder, emotional disturbance, and intellectual impairment. So those are the big major SPED categories that are found within the school system. Once students are eligible for the services at a young age, they usually stay within those, they usually stay with their IEP until they graduate out of high school. All right, so these are the people that you see at the IEP table. You always have the students, you want the parents involved, the general education teacher, of course, the specialists, those are interventionists, administrators, and people that offer related services. So those are your specific, your speech language pathologist, your occupational therapist, and your physical therapist. Okay, so it's always good to include as many people as the teacher, well, as the student sees per day, so that they can all create an IEP plan that works for everybody that works with that child. All right, so now I'm going to get to the accommodations and versus modifications. So a lot of accommodations can be given to students. It just depends on what you see is the need. The difference between accommodations and modifications is that with accommodations, you're using things that are supportive tools for the student so that they can access the curriculum at their own pace and at their own speed. Whereas modifications are actual changes to the curriculum. So here are some things that I've used with my students. Graphic organizers are great, especially for for my younger kids, because they keep students organized and they allow students to see how you make connections with different concepts. Text-to-speech technology is really great. Students that have problems with writing, speech to text is great. A lot of one-on-one support, pull in and push out services, verbal praises. That does a lot for students, just encouraging them, keeping them focused. Preferential seating in the front of the class, next to the teacher, those type of things. We give a lot of allotted time differences. So that just means that they get more time to complete a task or test or homework assignments. I provide a lot of audio tapes for my students that have trouble with reading. Also allowing use of computer or speech generated devices. So that helps with younger students that are not really expressive. They have tablets that you can use that the student could point to different things that are embedded in the system that allow them to speak or ask for things that they need if they have different difficulties with speech. Another accommodation we see a lot is a lot of reduced homework assignments or, taking questions and stuff off a quiz. So modifications that will be implemented are different from accommodations because now we're talking about modifying curriculum. That is just creating individual work for students based on their level of academic performance, allowing students to complete less homework. Instructional classroom environment. So the instructional classroom is usually a smaller, constrained, self-contained classroom where it's usually students that have like severe intellectual impairment or severe physical difficulties. It's usually only about 10 or 15 students in that, usually 10 to 15 students in the classroom. And then they also have a lot of like co-teachers and additional learning specialists in that class to work with the students that are at the lower level of functioning intellectually and physically. And another modification we use a lot is a modified grading scale. So that's just for students that may be in the general education classroom with the co-teacher, but their grading scale might be different. So instead of a 90 equaling an A, it might equal, instead of like an 85 equaling B, it might equal an A. Or instead of a 79 equaling a C, it would equate to like a B. Okay, so that you have that as a tool to implement if you're writing an IEP, or you could suggest it for a student that just needs that actual embedded grading scale or modified grading scale. Okay. A few other accommodations that, all right,
Andrea, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm really sorry. I know a lot of the students have class right now, so they're probably going to have to leave.
Okay.
So if you guys have class right now, go ahead. I know you have it right now, so go ahead and leave. If there's people left over, if Alexandria, if you want to keep going, that's up to you. But I
This
just,
is the last, well, this is the last
oh,
slide
good.
outside the
Perfect.
Padlet. So yeah, you can, if you want, yeah, it's okay.
Perfect.
But these are just accommodations that I included because I don't work in early childhood. So that I thought would be helpful for younger students. So like sandbox play with sensory tools is a big one. A lot of students like squishies and Play-Doh. Rice with manipulatives is a great one. Providing a lot of additional visual materials is very helpful. Keeping a colorful environment is really stimulating for students that are young. Personal space, I know, is a big one with my young kids. Like they sometimes just need a little area to themselves. That could totally be helpful. Repeated directions a lot. Reading text orally to students also helps. Always provide extra examples. Peer instruction is a good one. Frequent check-ins, alternative activities, delayed transitions. I wanted to hit on that because students with autism sometimes have a very difficult time transitioning from one activity to another. So kind of like explaining yourself, giving extended time for transition for those students is very helpful because especially younger students with autism who haven't developed that emotional regulation yet, that is a big deal. Okay. Testing in different settings. And like I said, I provided sensory tools twice. Okay. So other sensory tools for older students are like fidget tools, noise canceling headphones for students that have difficulties with loud noises and loud sounds in the classroom, and a wiggle cushion for the little babies. Okay. All right. So I have also a nice amount of instructional websites that help me and save me during remote learning. Cami app is a great app that you can add colorful depictions of like worksheets and you can edit them yourself. It's a really great tool. I love Cami. Like students can use it to talk and give answers instead of writing. It's just really nice. You could change your worksheets to make them more interactive. I think that's a great learning tool for students that are in early education. ClassKick is another one I love. Nearpod is great. I'm sure we're all familiar with Khan Academy. iExcel is another great tool to use for students with special learning differences. GimKit is a fun tool. Reading Rockets was something I did a whole paper on at Governor State at one point. That's a nice resource. And it also gives you embedded information on how to teach reading to students with learning differences. So I would definitely recommend that one. And then Padlet, which is what I'm going to show you all in just a second. So if you would like to ask me any questions or any final thoughts, please use the Padlet link. I'm going to actually drop it in the chat. Anything that you thought interesting about the presentation, let me know. That's the login passcode. I'll be here. Oh, I'm going way over for the next few minutes. If you all have anything you want to ask me in particular, my email, I'll drop in the Padlet as well. If you want to like just chat outside of this presentation, I'll be here. Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
thank you. Thank you so much. I know I feel so bad rushing you because there's so much information with this.
And I hate that my computer gave me the flux earlier, so that took a lot of time off.
Yeah.
So I'm going to drop the Padlet in the link.
Okay, perfect.
In
In
the
the
chat box. Okay.
Perfect. And then because I post this on the student support shell that everybody has access to, and I'll put the Padlet information on there too. So
thank you so much.
yes, of course. But yeah, that's definitely great. Go ahead and put that in the chat when you can. And thank you everyone for staying a little bit over. I know we went over, but had some
Yes, we
technical
did. Thank you
difficulties.
so much. Yes. And now I can't
I have
hear.
a question.
Yes, I'm listening.
Is it okay if I get like the beginning of the slide so I can take a picture so I can get credit for class
Sure.
in the last slide?
And you'll actually, Kyra, you'll actually have access to the this recording on the student support shell. I'll put that up tomorrow. So you'll be
Okay.
able to actually take a picture of the slides that she presented. So
Oh, okay.
maybe-
Well, never mind. I'll just get it from there then.
Okay, perfect.
might be a
Okay.
little bit easier, and then you can figure out which ones you need. So
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Any other
Can you
questions?
put the, can you put the password in the chat as well?
Yeah, sure. 1 second. All right. Oh, there. All right, and that's the login.
perfect. Thank you. So yeah, go ahead, you guys, take that with you.
Thank you so much.
Add in your comments, all of that. And then, like I said, I'll put this in the student support shell, the recording, as well as the Padlet information.
Okay, I flew through those slides, so yeah.
I know. I appreciate it. So thank you everyone for sticking around. Thank you, Alexandria. That was great. So
Thank you for having me.
of course. All right. Well,
You're
everyone
welcome.
have a great night and thanks again.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.